Dr. Amanda Brooks stared at the crystalline invitation, rotating gently above her desk, its prismatic surface catching the late afternoon sunlight streaming through her office window at the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. The message was beautiful, she had to admit, an elegant fusion of art and technology that put Earth's holographic displays to shame. But something about its arrival made her uneasy. "Play it again," she commanded, and the crystal pulsed with inner light. A voice like chimes in a spring breeze filled the room. "The Grand Galactic Council extends its most prestigious welcome to the representatives of Earth. After 50 years of observing your remarkable progress, we invite you to join our enlightened assembly of species." Amanda ran her fingers through her silver-streaked hair, a habit from her junior diplomat days that she'd never quite shaken. The timing was almost too perfect, or too suspicious. Just last week, she'd concluded a revolutionary trade deal with the Zixri, securing humanity access to their advanced quantum computing technology. And yesterday, the news networks had been buzzing with the successful test of the Henderson Drive, Earth's homegrown FTL system, that somehow managed to be 30% more efficient than standard Council designs. Her secure comm channel chimed. "Dr. Brooks, the Joint Chiefs are requesting your presence in the Situation Room." "On my way," she replied, grabbing her tablet and a crystal. As she strode through the corridors of the Washington complex, her mind raced through the implications. 50 years of limited contact, of being treated like gifted children by the Council races, and now this. The Situation Room was already packed when she arrived. General Martinez's weathered face looked even more serious than usual as he gestured her to the front. "Doctor, please share what you know about Council membership protocols." Amanda connected her tablet to the main display. In the past 50 years, only 2 other species have been granted membership, the Orcs and the Nex. Both had been in contact with the Council for over a century before their invitation. She pulled up comparison charts. Both were also significantly less advanced than us in several key areas when they were admitted, and neither of them had developed their own FTL, added Admiral Chen from the back of the room. "They're still using licensed Council tech." "Exactly." Amanda highlighted a series of data points. "We're an anomaly. We've compressed 200 years of expected development into 50. The Henderson Drive is just the latest example. We don't just use alien tech. We improve it, adapt it, sometimes completely reimagine its applications. Which makes us either very valuable," General Martinez said, "or very dangerous." A junior officer burst into the room, face flushed with excitement. "Sirs, we've just detected a Council dreadnought dropping out of FTL at the Luna checkpoint. They're requesting permission to send a diplomatic shuttle to Earth." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. Council ships never came this close to Earth. It was one of their many protocols that had kept humanity at arm's length for decades. "Well," she said, forcing a smile, "it seems they're not waiting for our response to the invitation." General Martinez's face hardened. Or they're not really asking. As the room erupted into discussion, Amanda studied the crystal invitation again. In its facets, she caught a fleeting reflection, multiple copies of herself, each slightly different, as if the crystal was showing parallel possibilities. For a moment, one of the reflections seemed to look directly at her, its expression a warning. Then the crystal pulsed once, and the reflection was gone. "Permission to proceed with diplomatic reception protocols," she asked the general, her voice steady despite the unease growing in her gut. Martins nodded slowly. "Proceed, but let's keep the emergency protocols on standby. Something tells me we're about to find out why the most powerful organization in the galaxy suddenly wants to be our best friend." As Amanda left to prepare for the Council's arrival, she couldn't shake the memory of that warning reflection. After 50 years of being kept outside looking in, humanity was finally being invited through the door. She just hoped it wasn't a door that would lock behind them. Major James Harrison felt his combat engineer's instincts screaming as he studied the ancient artifacts arranged in a perfect circle within the Council's crystal spire. The massive chamber, with its mile-high ceiling of living crystal, should have left him awestruck. Instead, his eyes kept coming back to those seemingly innocuous devices. Beautiful, aren't they? The tall, silvery-skinned council member, who had introduced himself as first speaker Zach Still, gestured at the artifacts. They have been part of every species ascension ceremony since the first days of the council. They look almost like quantum resonators, James muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His augmented vision, a recent military upgrade, kept trying to analyze their structure, but coming back with error messages. Dr. Brooks shot him a warning look from where she stood with the rest of Earth's delegation. The ceremony was about to begin, and they'd been briefed about the importance of following every protocol exactly. But something was wrong. James had spent 15 years studying and reverse engineering alien tech. These artifacts didn't match any known council design philosophy. They were too organic, almost like they were breathing. The chamber began to fill with representatives from 100 different species. James recognized the crystalline Arxer, the shadowy Nyx, and even a few Zix remergents. All eyes were on the human delegation. First speaker Zach Still raised his 4 arms. Today, we welcome our youngest brothers and sisters to the Galactic community. Earth has shown remarkable progress, advancing at a pace that, he paused for effect, some might call concerning. James' hand dropped to his sidearm, but it was too late. The artifacts hummed to life, creating a web of energy that encompassed the human delegation. Other species stepped back, their expressions a mix of pity and relief. The species bind will ensure a more controlled integration, Zach Still announced. Your natural aggression and dangerous innovation will be properly channeled for the good of all. But something unexpected happened. As the energy field tried to interface with their minds, James felt a strange resonance. His military neural implants weren't fighting the energy. They were absorbing it, translating it, understanding it in ways that should have been impossible. Sir, he shouted to Dr. Brooks, their tech. It's like it's teaching me how it works. Around him, other humans were having similar experiences. A junior diplomat was suddenly speaking perfect council standard without her translator. A security officer's eyes glowed as she interfaced directly with the chamber's defense systems. The artifacts began to vibrate, their organic surface cracking. Alarm spread through the alien crowd as readings went off the charts. Impossible. Zach Still's silver skin had gone almost white. The bind has worked on every species for 10,000 years. James could see it now. The entire network of energy, the connections between the artifacts, the fundamental principles they operated on. Humanity's neural architecture was different, more adaptable. Instead of being bound, they were assimilating the very technology meant to cage them. Shut it down. Someone screamed, but it was too late. The artifacts exploded in a cascade of impossible colors, sending waves of strange energy rippling through the chamber. When the light faded, the circle of devices was nothing but ash. James stood, his mind racing with new understanding. He could feel the council's systems all around him, could almost touch their networks with his thoughts. One look at his fellow humans showed they'd been similarly changed. Dr. Brooks stepped forward, her voice cold. Would anyone care to explain why the council just attempted to enslave humanity? But James wasn't listening. His enhanced senses had detected something far more terrifying. The failed binding hadn't just destroyed the artifacts in the chamber. It had sent a shockwave through some kind of network. A network that seemed to span the entire council space. And somewhere in the distance, something ancient and terrible had begun to break. Lieutenant Emily Reeves' hands flew over the alien console, her mind processing data streams with a speed that would have been impossible before the species bind incident. 3 days had passed since the failed ceremony, and the council was still in chaos. Not that she cared. She had bigger problems. "These energy signatures make no sense," she muttered, her neural implants highlighting patterns in the ancient data scrolling past. "It's like the whole network is breathing." The council archives were supposedly restricted, but their security systems might as well have been open doors now. Whatever the species bind had done to human minds, it had given them an intuitive understanding of council technology that went beyond simple operation. Her team had set up in an abandoned research station deep in the archives. Dr. Thompson was analyzing material samples from the destroyed artifacts, while Lieutenant Chen had somehow managed to interface directly with the archive's quantum core. "Emily." Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "You need to see this. Section 42B, hidden partition." She found the file almost instinctively, her enhanced mind slicing through layers of encryption. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Get Dr. Brooks down here. Now." 20 minutes later, the small research station was crowded with Earth's top officials. Emily pulled up a three-dimensional display of the galaxy, highlighted with thousands of pulsing points of light. The species bind wasn't just a control device, she explained, her voice tight. It was part of a network, a vast web of similar artifacts buried throughout council space. They're all connected, all drawing power from some central source we haven't located yet. And let me guess, Dr. Brooks said, when the ceremony went wrong. Emily nodded, expanding one section of the map. The feedback didn't just destroy the ceremonial artifacts. It sent a shockwave through the entire network. "Look at these readings. The space-time fabric around each node is starting to unravel." She pulled up another display, this one showing a complex mathematical model. The network wasn't just for control, it was stabilizing something. Some kind of ancient containment system, maybe. But now, it's breaking down, Dr. Thompson finished, her face pale as she studied the data. "And when it goes," Emily gestured, and the display showed a simulation of the collapse. They watched in horror as a cascade of failures rippled through council space, tearing reality apart in its wake. "How long?" Dr. Brooks asked. "A month, maybe less." Emily highlighted several areas where the degradation was already visible. "Earth will be safe. We're outside the network's influence. But the core worlds of the council." A sudden alarm blared through the station. Lieutenant Chen's voice came over the comm, tense and urgent. "We've got company. Council security forces headed this way. Someone must have detected our access to the restricted files." Dr. Brooks straightened her uniform. "Download everything you can. We need to warn them." "Warn them?" Emily asked, already creating backup copies of their findings. "They just tried to enslave us." "And now we have a choice," Brooks replied. "We can let billions die out of spite, or we can show them what humanity really is." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Emily made a final copy of the data, then triggered an emergency purge of the systems. As armed guards burst through the door, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. The council had tried to bind humanity, fearing their potential for destruction. Instead, they might have just given humans the tools needed to save the galaxy from the council's own ancient mistakes. If, she thought, as energy weapons were leveled at them, they could just get anyone to listen before it was too late. Captain Michael Sullivan had never seen the council chamber so chaotic. Delegates from 100 species shouted over each other in a cacophony of translated voices, while security drones buzzed nervously overhead. He stood at the central podium, his dress uniform crisped despite the tense hours of debate. "The data is right in front of you. he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Your own monitoring stations are reporting the anomalies. We've got less than 3 weeks before the cascade failure reaches critical mass." First speaker Zach Still's silver skin rippled with dismissive patterns. These findings were obtained through illegal access to restricted archives. Furthermore, we're expected to trust the words of a species that just demonstrated unprecedented resistance to Council technology. Michael resisted the urge to punch the smug alien. 20 years of military discipline helped, but only barely. With all due respect, first speaker, we're not the ones who tried to enslave an entire species during what was supposed to be a welcome ceremony. Movement caught his eye. In the upper tiers, where the younger council races sat, a group of crystalline Orcs representatives were huddled around a data terminal. One of them, their faceted body glowing with internal light, stood up. Speaker Kirix of the Orcs requests recognition. The chamber's AI announced. Zach Still waved a dismissive hand. Granted. Our scientific outposts have detected similar anomalies. The Orcs' translated voice rang clear. 3 of our archaeological sites have reported dimensional instabilities consistent with the human findings. Michael felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. Another council member, a floating gas cloud in a containment field, moved forward. The Orcs are barely more than associates themselves. The cloud pulsed dismissively. Their evidence is as suspect as the humans. I move to have both species contained until a proper investigation. An alarm cut through the chamber. On the main display, a red warning light pulsed over the Centauri sector. Michael's enhanced mind connected to the feed instantly, processing the data before the Council's own systems could display it. "That's a Class 3 dimensional rupture," he announced, his voice hard. "Exactly like our models predicted. Anyone want to explain that away as human deception?" The chamber erupted again, but this time with fear rather than anger. Michael noticed several of the older council members slipping away through private exits. His neural implants picked up encrypted communications spiking throughout the building. "They know," he vocalized to his hidden combat team. "They're going to try to evacuate the leadership without warning anyone else." A crystalline chime cut through his thoughts. The Orcs representative, Kirix, had somehow approached without him noticing. Captain Sullivan. The alien's surface rippled with complex patterns. "My species may be young to the Council, but we are not blind. We have archives of our own. Archives that speak of similar events in the ancient past." Michael's enhanced mind made the connection. The last time they tried to use the species bind, it failed. An entire sector of space simply ceased to be. Kirix's crystal body dimmed. The Council erased all records, but our archaeologists found evidence. We've been monitoring the network ever since, waiting for signs of instability. A commotion near the main doors drew their attention. Council security forces were flooding in, their weapons trained on the human delegation. "Looks like diplomacy just failed," Michael muttered, then switched to his command channel. "All teams, initiate Protocol Omega. Get our people out, and make sure every species representative gets a copy of our data. If the Council won't listen." "We will help," Kirix interrupted. "The Orcs remember what it means to be the outsiders, and we remember the price of Council secrets." As chaos erupted in the chamber, Michael allowed himself a grim smile. They'd come here to save lives, and they would, whether the Council liked it or not. The only question was, how many would die before the old guard admitted they'd built their entire civilization on a ticking time bomb? Dr. Rachel Thompson stared at the holographic model floating above the laboratory's central platform, her enhanced mind processing the cascade of data faster than any computer. The Joint Human Orcs Research Facility, hidden in an asteroid belt at the edge of Council space, had been her home for the past week. Now it might be their last hope. "The degradation is accelerating," she announced, manipulating the display to show the growing web of dimensional fractures. "We've lost 3 more monitoring stations in the past hour." Her Arxer colleague, Chief Scientist Virix, their crystalline form glowing with worry purple light, moved to study a different section of the model. The Council's ancient records were incomplete. They'd never truly understood what they were managing. Rachel's neural implants pinged as new data flooded in. The species bind network hadn't just been a control system. It had been holding something back. Something the ancients had found between the dimensions, something they'd never been able to fully contain. "Look at these energy signatures," she said, highlighting a series of anomalous readings. The network wasn't just stabilizing space-time. It was creating a prison. "And now, the walls are breaking down." Virix's voice carried harmonics of fear. "My team's calculations suggest less than 20 days before total system failure." Rachel was about to respond when the lab's security alarms screamed to life. Red warning lights bathed the chamber as armed guards rushed in, taking up defensive positions. "We've got multiple Council warships dropping out of FTL," Security Chief Rodriguez announced over the comm. "They're launching boarding pods." "Delete everything," Rachel ordered, her fingers flying over control surfaces. "They can't be allowed to." The explosion caught her mid-sentence, throwing her across the lab. Through smoke and emergency force fields, she saw Council shock troops pouring in. But something was wrong. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated. "Virix," she shouted, spotting her colleague slumped against a console. The Arxer's crystalline body was cracked, their inner light flickering weakly. "The data." Virix's voice was barely audible. "They're not here for the data. They're here to silence us. The Council. They would rather let billions die than admit their mistake." Rachel's enhanced mind connected to the lab's systems, initiating emergency protocols even as she dragged herself toward her fallen friend. But she was too late. A single precise shot shattered Virix's core, their light fading to darkness. Rage and grief fueled her actions as she connected deeper into the facility's network. The Council troops were approaching with weapons raised, but she wasn't going to make it easy for them. "Security override Thompson Alpha 9, she commanded. "Initiate protocol burning truth." The lab's quantum cores surged, transmitting their complete findings to every major communication hub in Council space. Let them try to suppress this when it was already spreading across every channel, every emergency frequency. As alarms blared and systems overloaded, Rachel pulled up the final simulation one last time. The model showed what they'd discovered just hours ago. The network's collapse wouldn't just destroy Council space. It would release whatever ancient horror they'd been containing all these millennia. The troops were almost upon her now. With her last free moment, she sent one final message to Earth Command. "Prison breaking. Entity contained by ancients will be free. Evacuation only option. Tell them to run." Then the world exploded in light and pain as stun weapons fired, and Rachel Thompson's enhanced mind went dark. Her last thought was of Virix and how the Council's fear of truth had just condemned countless more to death. But she'd done her part. The data was out there now, spreading like wildfire through the galaxy's networks. They could silence her, but they couldn't silence the truth. The question was, would anyone act on it in time? Colonel David Miller stood on the bridge of the EFSA's Prometheus, watching as his fleet took position around the uninhabited star system. Operation Wake Up Call was about to begin, and the weight of billions of lives rested on its success. "All ships report ready, sir," his XO, Commander Sarah Wells, announced. Her neural implants were synced with the fleet's battle network, giving her real-time updates from every vessel. "The Arxer observer ships are in position to record everything." David nodded, his enhanced mind processing multiple data streams from the operation. "And our unwanted audience. 3 Council battle groups just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. They're maintaining distance, but have weapons charge. Perfect. They needed witnesses for this, even if they were hostile ones. The data Dr. Thompson had released before her capture had caused chaos throughout Council space, but many still refused to believe. They needed something more dramatic. Begin the countdown, he ordered. Activate the pulse beacon. The device they created was based on Dr. Thompson's research, a scaled-down version of the failed species bind, modified to interact with the ancient network. They'd found this system because it contained one of the network's nodes, buried deep within its star. Beacon active, Sarah reported. Energy signatures match the historical data from the binding ceremony. Ready to initiate controlled failure on your mark. David took a deep breath. If their calculations were wrong, they could accelerate the very catastrophe they were trying to prevent. But they were out of options and out of time. Execute. The beacon pulsed once, sending a carefully calibrated signal toward the star. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sensors exploded with readings. Space-time distortion detected. Sarah's voice was tense. The node is responding exactly as predicted. Dimensional barriers are beginning to. She never finished the sentence. Reality. Twisted. The star seemed to fold in on itself, its light bending in impossible ways. Through his neural link, David could see the actual fabric of space starting to tear. All ships, fall back to safe distance, he ordered, even as his enhanced mind recorded everything. Orcs are observers. Are you getting this? Affirmative, Colonel Miller. The crystalline voice of their Orcs ally came through. The evidence is undeniable. We're broadcasting on all Council frequencies. The tear in space-time grew, creating a window into something else, something that shouldn't exist in their universe. And through that window, David caught a glimpse of what the ancient network had been containing all these millennia. By all that's holy, Sarah whispered, her face pale. Is that what's going to? Initiate containment protocols. David's voice cut through the horror. Emergency jump coordinates to all ships. We've seen enough. The fleet responded instantly, their enhanced crews working in perfect synchronization. The beacon activated its shutdown sequence, and specialized energy fields began to stabilize the tier. As they retreated to safe distance, David noticed the Council battle groups were no longer in attack formation. Their sensors must have confirmed everything. Sending recorded data to all major population centers in Council space, Sarah reported, along with Dr. Thompson's research and our evacuation recommendations. And the Council ships. They're requesting a direct channel, sir. Priority 1. David allowed himself a grim smile. Put them through to my ready room. Time to explain to our friends just how little time they have left to save their people. He took one last look at the stabilizing tear in reality. They'd shown the galaxy what was coming. Now came the hard part, convincing them to accept help from the very species they tried to enslave. But first, he had a message to send to Earth Command. Operation Wake Up Call was a success. The galaxy had seen the truth. Now they just had to hope they could save enough of it. Admiral Jennifer Walsh watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Salvation's Dawn, her enhanced mind processing the movements of 10,000 ships at once. The largest evacuation in galactic history was underway, and every second counted. Status update on the Centauri sector, she commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. It's bad, Admiral, her tactical officer reported. The dimensional cascade is spreading faster than predicted. We've lost contact with 3 more colony worlds in the last hour. A holographic display showed the truth in brutal detail. Red zones of total reality failure were spreading like cancer through Council space, while blue icons represented the desperate fleet of refugee ships. Everything from luxury liners to converted cargo haulers. The Arxer Relief Fleet is requesting permission to dock, Communications Officer Torres announced. They've got another 5,000 refugees from the outer colonies. Granted, Jennifer ordered. And get me a direct line to their commander. The crystalline face of Admiral Kexry appeared on her neural feed. The Arxer had proven to be humanity's strongest allies in this crisis, their ships working tirelessly alongside the human fleet. We've got problems. Kexry's translated voice was grim. The Vale sector is destabilizing ahead of schedule. There's a council mining colony there. 20 million souls. Jennifer's enhanced mind ran the calculations. They had barely enough ships in range to attempt a rescue. But the risk. Admiral. Torres' voice cut through her thoughts. Priority alert from the quantum network. We've got multiple dimensional fractures forming in the Vale sector. Something's coming through. The tactical display shifted, showing the horror unfolding. The ancient entity they glimpsed during Operation Wake Up Call was breaking through, its impossible geometry tearing reality apart around it. How long until total sector failure? Jennifer demanded. 3 hours at most. But the council ships in the area, they're running, leaving their people behind. Jennifer felt ice in her veins. The council, even now, was choosing to save its elite while abandoning their own citizens. She thought of the species bind, of their attempt to enslave humanity. It would be so easy to let this be their punishment. But that wasn't who they were. All ships, this is Admiral Walsh. She broadcast on all frequencies. We are initiating Operation Mercy. All available vessels proceed to these coordinates. We're going to save those people. Admiral. Her XO protested. If we divert the fleet now, we risk everything by doing nothing. Jennifer cut him off. Humanity chose to save the galaxy once. We're not stopping now. The bridge erupted into action as orders were relayed. Through her neural link, Jennifer could feel the massive fleet turning, ships breaking formation to answer her call. The Arxer vessels moved with them, their crystalline hulls glowing with determination. Tactical. Show me the approach vector, she commanded. We'll need to thread the needle between those reality tiers. The display updated, showing a nearly impossible path through the chaos. But Jennifer had seen humanity do the impossible before. Their enhanced minds and unbreakable will had already changed the course of history once. Time to do it again. All ships, prepare for emergency translation, she announced, her voice carrying to every vessel in the fleet. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity really stands for. As the Salvation's dawn led the fleet toward almost certain death, Jennifer allowed herself a small smile. The Council had tried to bind them, fearing their potential for destruction. Instead, they'd given humanity the power to save everyone, even those who'd once been their enemies. Now they just had to survive long enough to prove it. Commander Ryan Cooper stood before the newly formed Galactic Alliance, the Great Hall of Unity packed with representatives from every surviving species. 1 year had passed since the Great Exodus, and the galaxy had changed forever. Through the hall's crystal windows, he could see the dimensional barrier that now separated safe space from the vast wastelands that had once been Council territory. The swirling energy patterns were both beautiful and terrifying, a constant reminder of how close they'd come to total annihilation. The final reports are in, he announced, his enhanced mind projecting the data for all to see. The last of the containment network has been successfully dismantled. The threat of cascade failure is over. The hall erupted in applause, crystal chimes from the Arxer mixing with the various sounds of a dozen other species. Ryan noticed former first speaker Zach still among them. The once proud council leader, now just another refugee saved by those he tried to enslave. But this is more than a victory report, Ryan continued once the noise had died down. This is a reminder of what we almost lost, and what we gained instead. He brought up images from the past year. The Salvation's dawn, leading the desperate rescue of the Vale sector, human, and Arxer ships fighting side by side against reality itself. The massive refugee fleets finding safe harbor in Earth's systems. The old council feared what made us different, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. They saw our adaptability, our drive to improve upon what we found, and they tried to bind it. Instead, they gave us the tools to save everyone. Dr. Amanda Brooks, now the Alliance's chief diplomat, stepped forward. The research teams have finished their analysis of human neural architecture, our unique consciousness structure that allowed us to resist the species bind. It's not just different. It's compatible with every known form of alien technology. We don't just use it, we understand it at a fundamental level. And now we're sharing that understanding, Ryan added. The new neural enhancement programs are available to all species who want them. Not to control, but to connect. To build something better together. He gestured to the team beside him, human, Arxer, and former council scientists working in perfect harmony. Dr. Thompson would have been proud to see her work continued like this. The ancient entity is contained behind the dimensional barrier, he continued. But unlike the old council, we're not hiding the truth. Every species has access to the research, the warnings, and the technology to monitor it. Never again will such a secret threaten our existence. The hall grew silent as he reached the final part of his speech. 1 year ago, the council tried to bind humanity because they feared our potential. Today, we've proven that the only thing more dangerous than human ingenuity is trying to contain it. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. But we've also proven something more important, that the true measure of a species isn't in their power to destroy, but in their choice to save others even at great cost to themselves. The holographic display showed one final image, the memorial to those lost in the Exodus, where names from every species were listed together, united in both tragedy and hope. The old council is gone, Ryan concluded, but from its ashes, we've built something greater. Not an empire of control, but an alliance of equals. Not a prison of fear, but a future of shared understanding. As the hall erupted in thunderous approval, Ryan's enhanced mind caught a glimpse of the dimensional barrier shifting in the distance. Beyond it lay the ruins of the old order, a reminder of the price of fear and control. But here, in this hall, something new had been born. Something that had started with a betrayal and ended with salvation. Humanity had been tested. They had been betrayed. And in response, they had shown the galaxy not just how to survive, but how to truly live. Together.